They had a map. Every road, every turn, every corner where they expected me to stumble. They drew it in the dark, with careful hands and confident smiles, and they whispered to each other, "We know him. We know what he will do next." They had a map. Every road, every turn, every corner where they expected me to stumble. They drew it in the dark, with careful hands and confident smiles, and they whispered to each other, "We know him. We know what he will do next." They had a map. Every road, every turn, every corner where they expected me to stumble. They drew it in the dark, with careful hands and confident smiles, and they whispered to each other, "We know him. We know what he will do next." Oh. And I almost want to applaud them for trying. I stood at the edge of their beautiful, perfect plan, and I did not run left. I did not run right. I did not run at all. I simply disappeared from the map entirely. Because here is what no one ever tells you about people who build cages. They only build them the size of the animal they think they are trapping. They never account for the version of you that stopped being afraid of the cage. They planned for my desperation. They never planned for my peace. And that quiet, terrible, smiling peace was the one move that was never on their map. I remember the first time someone handed me a script for my own life. Not a real script, no paper, no ink, but a set of expectations, a neat little outline of who I was supposed to become. And I read it. Oh, I read every single word of it. I memorized their version of me the way a prisoner memorizes the sound of the guard's footsteps, not out of fear, out of strategy. They had studied my patterns, my habits, the exact hour I tend to crack, the exact pressure point where most men fold. They were thorough, I will give them that. Smart people, working very hard, building a very detailed portrait of a man they had already decided was predictable. And I sat across the table from them, smiling that smile they always mistake for weakness. And I let them feel brilliant. Because a man who thinks he understands you stops watching you. And the moment he stops watching, that is when you begin. There was a night, cold, the kind of cold that gets inside your coat and stays, when someone I trusted sat beside me and said, "I have figured you out," just like that, calm, certain, almost gentle about it. And I looked at the cigarette burning between my fingers, watched the ash curl and fall, and I said nothing. Because what do you say to a man who has just signed his own blindness into law? Oh, you smile, you nod, and you file it away in that quiet room inside yourself where you keep all the things they will never find. Here is what they never understood about me. Every move I have ever made that looked like chaos was a door I was opening while they were busy staring at the window. They expected rage, so I gave them silence. They expected silence, so I gave them laughter. They expected laughter, so I gave them something they had no word for yet. I have spent my entire life being one translation ahead of every person trying to read me. Not because I am clever. Oh, I mean I am, but that is not the point. Because I learned very early that the only safe place in this world is the place no one has thought to look. And that is the first twist in this little story of mine. You thought this was about outsmarting them. It was not. It was about becoming someone their intelligence had no category for. They built a system to predict dangerous men, angry men, broken men, They never built a system for a man who had passed through all three and come out the other side genuinely, terribly calm. I was not born outside their map. I was placed on it, neatly, obediently, right where they wanted me. I stayed on the map long enough to learn every road, every checkpoint, every little toll booth where they collect their fee of fear. I paid it too. For years, I paid it. With silence, with smallness, with a version of myself I wore like a costume so they would stop looking for the real one. And here, right here, is where most people make their mistake. They confuse patience with surrender. They see a man who is not fighting back, and they decide he is defeated. Oh, that conclusion, that beautiful, catastrophic conclusion. It is the most generous gift a quiet man can ever receive, because while they were celebrating my defeat, I was already somewhere else entirely, doing something that was not even on their map, something they had no name for, something they had not drawn a road to, because it had never occurred to them that a man like me could want something that had nothing to do with them at all. There is a particular kind of silence that only exists inside a room full of people who think they have already won. I know that silence well. I have sat inside it more times than I can count. And every single time, oh, every single beautiful time, I have used it like a blade. They gathered once, a room full of sharp suits and sharper opinions, laying out their conclusions about me like evidence on a table. I was not in the room, but someone who was told me later, almost laughing, they had you completely mapped out. And I said, I know. And then I asked, did they account for the fact that I knew they were mapping? The silence that followed that question was a different kind of silence altogether. See, the error they made was ancient, as old as every hunter who ever underestimated the animal because the animal had not yet moved. They confused stillness with ignorance. They thought I was standing still because I did not see the trap. I was standing still because I was deciding which version of myself to send through it. I want you to understand something about the way I think, not because I want your sympathy. Oh, I have no use for that soft currency. But because if you do not understand the architecture, you will miss the moment when it matters most. I do not plan against people. I plan around them. There is a difference. Planning against someone means you are still letting them define the playing field. Planning around them means you have already left the field entirely and built your own somewhere they cannot see. I had a coat once, old green with a torn inside pocket where I used to keep a folded photograph. Not of anyone important, just a street corner. A specific street corner in a city that no longer looks like it used to. I kept that photograph not as a memory, but as a reminder that places change, that what was once a landmark can become an empty lot in less time than anyone expects. I looked at that photograph every morning for years, and every morning it told me the same thing. Nothing they have built to hold you is permanent. And here is where the second twist arrives. Because I promised you twists, and I am a man of strange and particular promises. You assumed my moves were reactive, that everything I did was in response to what they did first, that I was always playing defense, always the one being pushed, always the one absorbing the blow before striking back. Oh, no, I was never reacting. Every single thing they did to me, every trap, every plan, every careful move, I had already walked through it in my mind 3 weeks before they made it. Not because I am a genius, because I have spent so long being underestimated that I have had nothing to do but think. Underestimation is the most generous scholarship the world has ever offered me. While they were too busy being impressive, performing their brilliance for each other, adjusting their collars, congratulating themselves on their strategy, I was in a quiet room, alone, reading their move before they made it. "You are paranoid," someone told me once, half laughing, half nervous, and I looked at them with that look, you know the one, and said, "No, I am just earlier than you." There is a moment in every well-laid plan where the people who built it need it to be true so badly that they stop testing it. They stop asking, "What if we are wrong?" They stop asking because the answer is too costly, because they have invested too much time, too much certainty, too much pride to afford the luxury of doubt. And I live in that doubt. I have furnished that doubt. I have made it warm and habitable while they stand outside in the cold of their own certainty. The moment they stopped questioning their map was the moment I became free inside it. Because a plan that its maker will not question is no longer a plan. It is a religion, and I have never been particularly reverent. So while they prayed to their certainty, while they built their beautiful, meticulous altar of assumptions and predictions, I simply walked out through the side door they had forgotten to put in their blueprints. Not with noise, not with fire, not with the grand theatrical exit they had prepared themselves to witness. I walked out quietly, almost tenderly, the way you leave a room where someone is still talking and does not yet realize you stopped listening an hour ago. I want to tell you about the night I stopped being afraid of losing. Not because I became brave. Oh, bravery is such a clean word for something that is never clean. But because I finally understood what losing actually costs, and the number was lower than they told me, much lower. They use fear like a currency. Every system, every person, every carefully constructed plan designed to keep you exactly where you are, it runs on fear. Fear of failure, fear of exposure, fear of becoming the thing they always whispered you might become if you stopped obeying the map. And for a long time, longer than I am proud of, I accepted that currency. I spent it on silence, on smallness, on apologies I did not mean delivered to people who did not deserve them. There was a chair I used to sit in, corner of a room that smelled like old paper and bad decisions. Every night I would sit in that chair and go through every move I had made that day, every word, every look, every moment where I had been just slightly less than what I actually was. And I would fold each one up and put it somewhere inside myself where it could not be seen. "You are fine," I would tell myself, not because I believed it, but because the alternative was a door I was not ready to open. Oh, the things we do to avoid our own honesty. Here is something no one ever warns you about when you finally step off their map. The silence that follows is not peaceful at first. It is loud, louder than any room full of shouting, because it is filled with every version of yourself you suppressed to survive their expectations. And they all come back at once. The angry one, the grieving one, the one that used to laugh at things before laughter became a performance. And you have to stand there, in the middle of all of them, and decide which one is actually you. I decided. And that decision, oh, that quiet, terrible decision, is where the third twist lives. Because you have been assuming that what I did next was something against them, something sharp, something designed to dismantle their plan piece by careful piece. But it was not. What I did next had absolutely nothing to do with them. That is the thing about people who build maps of you. They cannot conceive of a motivation that does not orbit their existence. They think every move you make is either toward them or away from them. They never consider the third direction, the one where you stop moving in relation to them entirely and simply begin moving toward something of your own. Something they were never part of, something their intelligence never thought to monitor because it did not look like a threat. It did not look like anything they recognized. "What do you want?" someone asked me once. Late, tired, genuinely confused, not angry, not threatening, just confused, as if the concept of me wanting something outside of their narrative was a grammatical error, a sentence that did not parse. And I looked at them for a long time before I answered, long enough to make it uncomfortable, long enough for them to start filling the silence with their own nervous assumptions. And then I said, "Something you have not built a word for yet." The ethical question, and there is always an ethical question, is this: did I become monstrous by refusing to be what they mapped? Or did I become monstrous the moment I learned their method and chose to understand it rather than condemn it? Because I did understand it completely. I understood the architecture of control the way a surgeon understands the body, not with hatred, but with a cold, detailed, almost loving comprehension. And that understanding is the thing that truly frightened them. Not my chaos, not my laughter, not any of the theatrical darkness they liked to catalog and analyze. What frightened them was that I could see the machine as clearly as the people who built it, and I had never once tried to destroy it. A man who wants to destroy a system is predictable. You can plan for destruction. You can map it, anticipate it, build walls against it, but a man who simply refuses to need the system, oh, there is no map for that. There is no contingency, no protocol, no carefully worded memo passed between smart people in quiet rooms that accounts for the man who just walked away, not in anger, not in defeat, not in any direction they had named, just away, into something they had no language for, into a version of himself their models never generated, into the one move that was never, not even once, on their map. I will tell you how it ends. Not with an explosion, not with fire climbing the walls of some grand symbolic structure, not with any of the spectacular conclusions they had prepared their cameras for. It ends quietly, the way the most important things always end, without an audience, without applause, without a single person in the room who understood what they had just witnessed. They were still running the plan the morning I was already gone, still moving pieces across their careful board, still congratulating each other on the elegance of their design. And somewhere in the middle of that celebration, oh, somewhere right in the warm center of their certainty, one of them looked up and noticed the space where I was supposed to be. Not gone dramatically, not gone with a letter or a warning or a final act of defiance, just absent. The way a word disappears from a sentence and suddenly the whole thing means something different. I had been planning the absence longer than they knew, not the way a man plans an escape, desperate, hurried, looking over his shoulder. the way a man plans a garden, slowly, with patience, choosing each thing carefully, knowing he will not see it bloom for years. I planted the absence in the small decisions first. The conversations I stopped having, the rooms I stopped entering, the version of myself I slowly, quietly stopped feeding until it grew thin and pale and finally still. There was a night, rain against glass, the particular sound of a city that does not know you are leaving it. When I sat with everything I had ever been told I was, and I held it the way you hold something before you set it down for the last time. Not with hatred, not even with relief, with something closer to pity. You were never me, I said to it, quietly, almost tenderly, and I set it down and I walked away from it the way you walk away from a grave, not running, not looking back, just moving forward with the particular straightness of someone who has finished a very long, very exhausting piece of business. And here, right here in this last stretch, is where I need you to understand something that changes the shape of everything you thought you heard me say. I did not win. Oh, not the way they measure winning, not with their trophies and their tallies and their careful accounting of who came out ahead. I did not come out ahead. I came out different. And different is not a category their scoreboard has a column for. The final twist is the quietest one. You have been listening to this as a story about outsmarting them, about the clever man who moved beyond the map and left his enemies bewildered. But that is their version of the story, the version that still centers them. The version that still makes their plan the thing everything else is measured against. My version is simpler and smaller and so much more devastating. I did not move beyond their map to defeat them. I moved beyond their map because I finally, after everything, all the years, all the performances, all the careful management of their perception of me, I moved beyond their map because I wanted one morning, just one, where I woke up and the first thought in my head was not about them, not about their plan, not about their expectations, not about the distance between who I was and who they had decided I should be. Just one morning, quiet, mine. Is that all? You are thinking. Oh, I can hear you thinking it. That is what all of this was for. One quiet morning? Yes, and the fact that that sounds small to you, the fact that a single morning of genuine peace sounds like an underwhelming conclusion to everything I have just told you. That right there is exactly how deep the map goes. They did not just map my movements. They mapped my desires. They taught me to want large things, power, victory, the dramatic reversal, so that I would never notice the small thing they had taken. The quiet, the ordinary, the unremarkable Tuesday morning with bad coffee and no agenda and not a single person in the world expecting anything from me. That is what they stole first, and they hid it so well beneath the noise of everything else that it took me years to realize it was even missing. So when I finally found it, when I finally held that quiet morning in both hands and looked at it in the light, oh, the sound I made was not triumphant. It was not the laugh they write about, not the theatrical cackle echoing off the walls of their imagination. It was something much smaller, much more honest. The sound a man makes when he finds something he lost so long ago he had almost convinced himself he never wanted it. And now you know the move that was never on their map. Not a strategy, not a gambit, not a single brilliant act of defiance they could study and document and add to their files. Just a man, choosing himself so completely, so quietly, so far outside every category they built, that their entire system of prediction had nothing left to predict. I am not what they made me. I am not what they feared I would become. I am not the warning in their memos or the variable in their models or the face they put on their carefully worded threat assessments. I am something they never accounted for, something so simple it embarrasses the complexity of everything they built against it. I am just here, awake, unscheduled, smiling a smile that belongs only to me, on a morning that belongs only to me, in a life that for the first time has no map at all. And somewhere, oh, somewhere right now, they are still drawing one.